Hey guys, it's Modest Major here, and today I wanted to talk about additions to Halo Infinite that are either entirely new to this iteration of Halo, or at least worth starting a dialogue over. I was considering how, although I've made a pair of videos on Halo Infinite in the past, I hadn't actually gone into detail talking about how I feel about the changes either seen in the technical preview, or ones that we know will be present in the full game. And there's a fairly decent proportion of changes. Firstly, I want to talk about sprinting in Halo Infinite. Sprint has been an extremely polarizing talking point for Halo players since its addition in Halo Reach. The dissenting criticisms really started to pile on once Halo 4 released with it, and since then it has felt like something that isn't going to go anywhere soon, regardless of players' strong thoughts. With Halo Infinite, clearly a lot of thought has gone into this, and it isn't something that they just greenlit into the game mindlessly. They wanted its behavior to not drastically imbalance the Halo traditional core experience, or interfere too heavily with the map flow. For one, on the technical preview, which I'll assume it's safe to say is definitive when it comes to base movement, sprinting was only a hair faster than regular movement speed. This almost comes to the point of not being noticeable, with Reddit threads showing video comparisons of a 3-second sprint versus a walk, with the walk not keeping up by about a quarter of a second. Not only this, but to add to that, radar doesn't detect movement by default. Only when you are sprinting will it begin to map player activity. Weapons can be fired quicker out of sprint, at least in comparison to Halo 5, and shield will recharge while sprinting. So they didn't necessarily just go for a hard all-out nerf to sprint, but again an attempt to balance and integrate it into Halo's sandbox. Of course, it remains to be seen if this will pay off in the long run, but I am optimistic about it. The radar is a point I also want to kind of divulge on, as in Halo MCC, I think that it's rare that when queuing up with long-term multiplayer fans of the series, complaints aren't made at how radar is on by default. It's an interesting proposal, really, having radar on by default, because the question is raised, who does that really benefit? You could make the case radar is on for newer players, but I would typically reject that idea because a more experienced player's ability to multitask using that radar in conjunction with the gameplay mechanics of Halo is going to come far more naturally. Generally, it leads to more stalemate-based gameplay where your intentions are mapped out far too clearly to the opponent, and it encourages laziness to people calling out over the microphone. I think Infinite really have gone in the right direction, essentially making it so even casually radar won't be constantly active, but just a deterrent to always holding down sprint. Whilst it may seem to promote slower gameplay, I believe sprint's effectiveness versus base movement speed will essentially make it so you only want to sprint to maybe get that lick of speed towards a power weapon or narrow escape, but will generally be so marginal as to not be pivotal to the moment-to-moment experience. Next, I want to go to more of a returning feature with the Halo 3 style equipment. I loved equipment in Halo 3, and I genuinely thought Bungie lost their mind when they removed the feature in Halo Reach. As a developer, I feel like the only thing that is a constraint when it comes to modifying equipment is creativity. I think you could argue equipment such as the flare and radar jammer from Halo 3 could be a little bit underwhelming over time, but I didn't always necessarily get a burst of adrenaline when popping one of those out. I don't think, however, that this should draw back from its potential utility and variability in the matchmaking landscape, because the grapple hook has shown us, hey, imagine how far this could go. I almost see parallels to these kind of ideals in Apex Legends, such as Octane having his signature jump pad equipment, or Gibraltar with his shield. What's preferable to me about these, however, is that equipment is only found on the map, fought over, and can be timed effectively. The grapple hook already feels like an addition that could give me the same excitement as going for the sniper rifle, and I love the idea that it could perform on different maps in different ways. Being able to grapple a weapon from underneath someone's nose is gleefully chaotic, and I'd love to see some last-minute buzzer beater moments in Halo esports featuring the grapple. As they're attempting to push Halo Infinite as a live service, I want to see them add more equipment into the game as time goes on. Maybe almost something like supers from Destiny. All the excitement of landing a super kill on Destiny, except with none of the BS from its insane lack of balance. Within the campaign, I think the free roaming aspect is a huge game changer for Halo moving forward. When I look back to my favorite missions from previous Halo games, for the most part they involve large open world motifs. Ark, Assault on the Control Room, Silent Cartographer, The Covenant, Metropolis. Most of these levels stand out to me because of the nature of their scale. Making this open-endedness the focal point of its campaign feels like a no-brainer. And with the success of games like Breath of the Wild, Elder Scrolls, Genshin Impact, Red Dead Redemption 2, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and this is only to name a few, it feels like a natural progression for Halo to try and move into. Nevertheless, I hope this doesn't reduce the ambience and atmosphere of Halo. Halo campaigns set the goals up incredibly well for the players, and I feel like the connection to the characters is very strong, and I hope it doesn't lose too much of it in the process. With Halo 5, there was almost no connection to the character of Spartan Locke, and my motivations as Chief were also greatly diminished within the campaign. I don't even think Halo 1 to Halo 3 had an overwhelming amount of storytelling. It's just what was there is iconic, and with the world building feeling akin to a blockbuster sci-fi movie, I hope with its expanded scope they don't sacrifice some of these aspects. With seasoned veteran of the Halo series Joe Staten back at the helm of the campaign, I think there's at least a far greater chance of success. Whilst I am more inclined to hype up Halo Infinite in my mind, I feel it's important to talk about two of the major features that won't be present in Halo Infinite. Having Forge and Split Screen not present from launch will be a fairly large blow to the title. Halo has sustained a lot of damage, as I'm sure we're all aware over the years, what from MCC's rocky launch, Halo 4's extremely polarizing launch, and Halo 5's missing Forge option, we've had our fair share of hard knocks. I think it's fair to say, at several times, since MCC at least, there's been times where I've been ready to stop giving 343 chances. There's a lot of back and forth between Halo enthusiasts regarding whether people need to let up on 343, and perhaps if people were a little bit softer, they could find more fun within the newer titles. I think, whilst there is potentially grains of truth to be found in that sentiment, often these issues, in my opinion, come from the faceless corporations, not the actual developers themselves. We've seen developer crunch, rough working hours, mismanagement being rife within the gaming industry as a whole recently, where the publishers become so large a sort of design by committee approach can begin tarnishing a series' overall integrity or polish. Bungie were ready to leave Microsoft, perhaps believing the grass to be greener on the other side, only to be embroiled in feuds with their newfound satanic publisher Activision. At this present time holding parties and celebrations for getting out of their clutches finally. This isn't even going down the Activision Blizzard rabbit hole for fear of this becoming a video essay of sorts. All of this suffices to say that in my opinion, criticizing openly and honestly in a public forum shouldn't be silenced. Instead embraced as long as none of these criticisms are taken to a personal level. We want these games to be great, and the corporations will sometimes only respond to overwhelming levels of criticism. If when the game launches the lack of Forge and Split Screen is not reconciled with the multiplayer or campaign offerings massively stepping up to the plate, I think there's fair reason to cast doubt. My main worry perhaps to the average person seems a little insubstantial, but to me a major concern. 343 haven't really shown that they can provide a strong enough base map lineup in multiplayer with their track record. Halo 4 showed us Adrift, Ragnarok, a remake, Haven, Exile. Halo 4 could honestly probably get away with it more due to its inclusion of Forge, albeit discounting more work done to make that Forge experience more comprehensive in later updates, which it kind of sorely needed. I wouldn't say it's a sterling lineup, nonetheless. But with Halo 5, we got a 50-50 split between remixes and regular maps, then a handful of Breakout and Warzone maps. The maps I'd consider worth remembering are Colosseum, Plaza, Truth, Empire, and Fathom. I think many people could argue I'm being generous there too, myself included. I am by no means an architectural powerhouse and could not pertain to give specific illustrations of why the maps don't always quite click like Bungie maps, but I'm sure some people would point towards Sprint. I reject that concept just a little bit. Often I found myself having a lot more fun on Halo 5 Forge remakes of classic maps than the newer Halo 5 maps, so I don't think it's only that. Data miner and Twitter user @Serasia4 has stated that there will be 23 maps in the full launch, so hopefully we get a nice spread of BTB and 4v4 maps in matchmaking, and they turn some heads so that our hungry appetite for Forge can at least be temporarily satiated. I suppose a final new thing I can talk about with Halo Infinite is that 343 have stated they intend for this to be the last standalone Halo game that they set out to create, and in a sense that means that they've probably been allocated allocated quite a few resources from Microsoft to make this game a hit. Microsoft have a fairly good thing going with their Game Pass right now, but one thing they've really been missing is a main flagship title. Going all in with Halo Infinite seems like the play for 343, and we can only hope that with the new Battle Pass systems and it being free with free DLC on the way to boot, I can only imagine if you're a devoted Halo fan, there'll at least be something to sink your teeth into, for sure. Hopefully not just a bite, and I think us Halo fans deserve a feast at this point in time. But I've been Modest Major, thanks for watching, peace.